I'm recording.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order, noting that we have two committee board members here and Jack Heineman is expected momentarily. I need approval of the agenda. So moved. Thank you. Approved. I have one public comment. Joanne, if you want to come forward at this point. Yeah, I want to just sit by Katie and we can read or make whatever comments you would like. It is being recorded, just so you know that, and people can listen to it later. And if you could hold your comments to about 3 minutes, that'd be awesome. Okay. And you may begin.
All right, my name is Joanne Ripp and I'm here to represent the Waunakee softball booster board. And the booster board met with the new athletic director, and last week to talk about the proposed changes to the field. I am the incoming president. I've been on the board for a few years. We're very excited to work with the school on this. We feel that the changes not only bring a positive future to the Waunakee softball program, but also safety of the players is being considered. So that is my statement.
All right, thank you. Thank you for making that. At this point, I'd like to slide into the Heritage Elementary School. We have a couple items there, starting with the bids for this time frame. I don't know, Richard, who's gonna.
Yeah, I think we're gonna open that up, or essentially this is another batch of sub and supplier approvals. With an emphasis mostly on finishes. There's a rather large scope associated with metal panels that's identified there. The low responsible bidders are identified, along with the over under amount as it relates to what we had budgeted. Happy to tick down through it in whatever level of detail or answer any questions that folks might have around these recommendations. But as always, Vogel Brothers has 100% confidence in the folks identified on this list, and in many cases has quite a bit of experience with these subs or suppliers. So I don't know if there's any specific questions that folks had.
I don't have any air, Jack.
So we'll be looking for a recommendation for next Monday's board meeting then, please.
So motion to move forward with the list of subcontractors.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Rich, for continuing to go through these for us.
Absolutely. There will be there'll be one last batch in September that should really wrap things up, and that'll be focused on exterior improvements, asphalt paving, curb and gutter, that type of thing.
Looking exciting out there. Walls and
Yeah, it's happening now.
cranes, and my grandson loves going up there.
Cool. We're excited to host some folks out there, hopefully here before school starts, and really give people a flavor of the progress and the direction we're heading.
What I talked to Rich about was wanting to set up a time where the board could do a walkthrough.
Yeah.
Looking at like that week right before school starts. And just have probably some evening, so everybody was able to attend like a 5:30 meeting and meet Rich and others out there. And have a walk at the site, and you can see exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Great,
Love to host that.
thank you. Next item is our budget guaranteed maximum price. There you.
That's mine.
That's
We're gonna
yours.
take team a little bit, but
Okay.
I'll kick this one off, so. Yeah, I think it's almost 4 months ago was the last time we presented budget information to the facility committee and the board. Obviously, the administration's been up to speed throughout that 4-month period with budget updates. So today, what we're really gonna talk through is our guaranteed maximum price. So that's the final construction number that Vogel Brothers guarantees to the district for the construction of just the Heritage Elementary School at this point. So I inserted this slide again. This is just a reminder of the total referendum amount of the 175 million. If you look on the bottom left-hand side there, what we were holding for total project budget for the Heritage Elementary was 63,660,000. In terms of the process, so due to the accelerated schedule and timeline of the Heritage Elementary, we did divide the design into 3 different bid packages, and so that's one of the drivers and why we've been in front of you so often asking for approvals of sometimes 1 or 2 scopes, sometimes larger, a larger list like the last couple have been, and as Rich mentioned, the next month will be the last one. But so ultimately, March, we had some awards, April, and then June was when we got all the final bids, and we've got through scoping and goals here over the last couple of months. So overall budget review, there's a lot of numbers up here, but what I'd like to encourage is if you just look down at the bottom row there. So in June of 2022, so a little over a year ago, as we presented budget information for establishment of the referendum resolution, that's where we determined or established at 63,660,000. In January of 23 is when we updated budget. We did present that to you in March. We were carrying that same total budget amount, but as you notice, the soft costs and the contingency and the construction numbers changed a little bit. And where we sit today with our guaranteed maximum price, overall, our total project budget for the Heritage Elementary is $62,540,000. So from a positive standpoint, that's savings of $1,120,000. And ultimately, our guaranteed maximum price will be established at $55,210,000. So that includes the construction and the remaining contingency amount of 5%, but that does not include the soft costs. So that's design, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and other scopes that are contracted directly from the division. So positive there, obviously, from a savings standpoint. That doesn't mean we're done looking at areas to save money. So we've already identified a few that haven't been reflected yet, but that over the next month or 2 months, we're finalizing details and numbers to produce some additional savings. We did meet with the UA and the district probably about a month and a half ago to review a long list and say, hey, what should we continue to pursue? What type of things are off the table? And so here's some examples you see here. The cast stone, I'm going to have Rich talk through the cast stone example.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an instance where identified on the documents as part of the exterior skid as an architectural precast stone product. There was an organization called Stonecast that got in early with EUA. And I'm going to try not to go down too far of a technical rabbit hole, but both of our low responsible masons had brought to the table an alternative to use a wet cast stone in lieu of an actual precast cast stone. The savings in that is in the name, and which have not been arrived at yet, or captured at this point, is in that $225,000–250,000 range, if not more. We have completely vetted the wet cast stone option with Epstein Ewan Architects from a finish perspective, and that's really the main differentiator between architectural precast and wet cast stone is the myriad of finishes. And what's really kind of nice about the wet cast stone is it very much mimics more of a natural stone, almost like a limestone product, where the architectural precast, depending on the molds and things, it can leave voids in the stone, things of that nature that might not lend itself to the same kind of durability as a true smooth finish. So we would offer, and again, this has been fully vetted from a finish perspective, performance perspective, durability, weathering, that type of thing with Epstein Ewan, and they have reviewed all of that technical data. We've got confirmation from the cast stone suppliers and our mason that the panel sizes that are identified on the drawings can be manufactured to maintain that design intent that EUA is looking for. So this is one, I want to be somewhat sensitive how I say that I think this is a real advantage of having, you know, experts on the team that can, as we navigate this process, bring to the table these kinds of options. I think the architectural precast company that got in at ground zero, if you will, with EUA, I guess I'll only offer that it's good to have competition, right? And not just have like one source for these materials. And so there, you know, there is a savings that will ultimately, you know, be recommended to the district take in using this alternate material.
Just on a high level, what's the difference between webcast and precast?
Virtually, they're almost identical processes, Jack. You take a mold and you pour concrete into that mold. Again, what it really boils down to in the different finishes that are available in the wet casting of that product. Both of them can be reinforced, both of them can be a myriad of thicknesses, or different thicknesses. Ultimately, it boils down to finish. And before turning it back over to Jay, you know, he had already touched on this. There's going to be opportunities, and we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't try and identify these opportunities. I don't think the door will certainly close even after we're done with buyout on opportunities to identify additional savings. As an example, and something that I haven't fully vetted yet, our food service vendor recently came to me and said, "Hey, Rich, is the district going to be interested in looking at a couple of other pieces of equipment that would perform at the exact same level, but offer some savings?" Right now, I haven't got my mind around those 100% yet. I will at the submittal time. But I just think as we continue to navigate this process, those opportunities are still going to exist. Like this won't be the last, you know, last kick at the can, so to speak. And that's really one of the things that we should be looking at as a steward of your dollars is opportunities to give you the same value or as equal products, but maybe at a more cost-effective opportunity kind of thing.
I guess the other question I've got is why wouldn't the architect be finding these opportunities for savings as well?
Well, in this particular instance with the cast stone, I think, again, getting in at ground zero for some of these subs and suppliers, I almost think like they do a really good job of selling their product as like really the only viable, you know, only realistic, only viable option. I'd like to think that the architects are having those types of discussions on the front end. But in this particular instance, I think Stonecast, the company that we're talking about, got the right person's ear and we were going down a path that I don't know, maybe wasn't the best for all parties interested kind of thing, right? So.
And in those scenarios, Jack, sometimes it is market driven. There's projects where that Stonecast product is more cost effective. And so it's pretty typical in this process that, you know, there's a basis of design selected for the original design. And as we can bring that information back, EUA's been great about saying, yeah, let's dig in and look at it.
This has been a really good team process. I mean, it's no different than what we did with the intermediate school or any of our other projects. There's a point where after when we get to this point in the project, we sit down and look at where are the things that are. What have we learned in the design? What have we learned in the bids? What have people brought forward? In this case, it's things that Vogel had brought forward. It's things administration brought forward. So let's say, can we look at this differently? What are our options? And then what are some things that some of our subcontractors have brought in? And we're starting that process earlier with the middle school, particularly given some of the things we've learned with some of the pieces here. So I think it's just part of the process, and we're trying to be transparent as far as kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, EUA, like today, this afternoon, I would call about the middle school where they reached out Friday and said, "Hey, we've got this idea. We think it saves money, but we don't want to go forward unless you tell us it does." So that interaction does happen with the design team. It's usually further up the food chain. Couple other areas, sunshades. Ultimately, we decided to eliminate the sunshades and be able to use that money elsewhere in the district that we felt was going to be a little bit more cost effective. And so that's another savings opportunity. We are looking into some prefabrication opportunities with some of the structural steel details as well. That'll really help put some savings back. The last two I have listed were items where we talked about as a group when we decided not to go forward. Ultimately, the driving factor there was, maintaining that standardization across the district. There were some opportunities from a lighting or a fire alarm perspective to go potentially a different route, but then you would lose that standardization. So I just wanted to bring up a couple examples that were on the table that we didn't take off as well. So. And as Rich mentioned, we'll just continue to flush all those ideas as well. We talked last week, one of the advantages with Heritage is, with it being the first project too, as you are able to identify opportunities for savings, it gives you a lot of opportunity to use it for other schools throughout the rest of the.
Rebecca, would you mind going back to the slide with the numbers for just a moment? Couple things to be thinking about as board members. We talked a little bit about this at the retreats. You do see that line that indicates at this point, we're recommending pulling $1.1 million out of the heritage bucket. If you go back to the previous slide, Rebecca, the one that has the scope of the referendum, or sorry, go one further. This was a reminder from Jay as to the original 4, if you want to call it, key pieces of the referendum that the public was asked to vote on. In effect, by pulling 1.1 million out of the far left, which was the elementary section, that money could be moved to any of the other sections to the right of that. When the public approves a referendum, it's a total. And it's for all of the items that are approved by the public. And so ultimately, the board will have decisions to make about savings. Do you want to move the savings to, example, district-wide maintenance, which is the one to the furthest to the right? Do you want to hold off on that at this point? We do have a period of time where we can expend funds for a referendum. But we talked a little bit at the retreat about these kind of decisions were going to be coming. And so just keep it in mind. It's not anything anybody has to decide today, but the net result of this, as Vogel was saying, you can pull out 1.1 million now. And then Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind scrolling back to the other slide with the numbers on it. The other important thing to keep in mind on this is the contingency line of 5%. Of course, the whole team, the district, Vogel and Eatway is working together to have a goal of protecting that contingency. We know whatever dollars that can be protected in the contingency, again, would allow us to do potentially to do more work throughout this referendum. So we're going to be watching that as closely as we can, all of us as a team. There clearly will be things coming up in a school of this size where we will use it. There's an example already where we're switching up the lighting plan of the parking lot. Rich has been working on that. It's a relatively small change, less than 10,000, but will improve the lighting of the entire site. So that's an example, but we don't expect to spend $2.6 million in things that we aren't planning as of right now between now and next August. So we will circle back to that dialogue at some point and again, hope that more funds can be pulled out of Heritage to go somewhere else. But as board members, that's what we would want you to be thinking about is are you comfortable continuing with the concept of 175 million and moving funds from one area to the next? And a perfect example about where this discussion will be helpful is really the high school. As we prepare for, the fall of 26, where there will be a high school campus with the 2 complexes. One of the things that we're going to be talking about eventually is the ability for the high school administration to be able to communicate with both buildings at the same time. And in order to really have a campus operational, we really would want the office to be able to communicate with the middle school building and vice versa through the same system. Both buildings have dated clock bell and PA systems that do not match what we're putting into either the new Heritage or the intermediate school. And so those are the kind of things we will be presenting to you, that there are uses of these funds elsewhere that fall within the referendum dollars that would put us in a much better position to be opening up a high school campus in the fall of 26. Anything to add, Randy?
I think that's exactly right.
I'll just throw one thing just to help frame your mind in terms of timing of stuff too. So the middle school. Final GMP presentation will likely be spring of next year. We'll have final drawings by the end of the year that'll go out to bid right around the first of the year. And then the high school TLC district work, that $5 million will probably be in that same time frame. So, in the next, what's that, 6, 7, 8 months, we'll have a lot of the scope narrowed down in terms of budgets to give you an idea of big picture sits as well.
How's the supply chain? Is that improving vendor delivery?
It's better. Electrical is still really bad. Jack, in terms of switchgear, generators. But other things are better. There's some anomalies versus, maybe they're using it as
Are
an
material
excuse.
costs coming down?
They're stabilized. Labor's been up a little bit more than I think we anticipated even 6 months to a year ago in terms of a lot of the labor agreements were established at the end of May, early June. And where we had traditionally seen that around the 3% range, it was 4 to 5%. And those are usually set for a 3-year window. So just like the district obviously has had a lot of those discussions too. That's one area where I've seen it bump a little bit up, but material is at least stabilized and hasn't necessarily shot way down. Like wood and certain things have, but other ones have just kind of stayed stable.
Thank you. We're done with that. I don't, thank you very much. Moving on to the easement needed for that project.
So as we work through the site utilities, just hold on, Rich, I might need your help. on this.
Oh, yes,
Sit back
yeah.
here. You still want to sit in the front row?
I need your help.
No, we're good. We're good.
We were working with Waunakee Utilities and a variety of utility providers to provide access to not only our new school, but also along the eastern edge of our property as the community to the south is going to be developed. This was always a part of the planning process when we went in front of the village, as we needed to have an ability to provide service to the neighborhood that's going to be built behind us. And so what we have here is the final version of a utility easement to get the utilities to our properties as well as to the potential future neighborhood to the south. There's a map at the back of it that Rebecca, maybe we could get to that. So you can kind of see what it looks like. And then I don't know, Rich or Jay, did you have anything to add as far as how this process went or?
No, just that it was identified that part of the reason driving this is some existing where things are currently located, and we had some this reroute helped facilitate us doing some tie-ins as it relates to sanitary and also like the TDS services, i.e. the fiber, and which supports the network cabling. So this easement along the east for rerouting of some of the services really help facilitate, those crossings of the existing bus road and those tie-ins that I mentioned. So this was a pretty well handled process here. Roxanne got involved and helped, professional engineering. And Roxanne Johnson got involved to help support this. So all in all, very positive solution.
And this would require board approval at the August meeting.
So this lot 1, is that the house next to it? So this is right along the lot line, basically.
Yeah, just inside the lot line, yes.
Yeah, we've met with the homeowner, we went through a few different things, when the project started.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is, but yes, that's the lot of the home next door.
Is it about 30 feet or? Width, easement?
I want to say it's 25 feet.
We do need a motion on this.
We will need a motion for this.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So we will take that to the board on Monday next. Thank you. Now moving on to the capital projects.
So we do have some updated information on the dishwasher that came in after we put this out, so. Rebecca's pulling it up. When we were at our last, actually our construction meeting for the new Heritage, we asked Vogel who was gonna be installing the dishwasher at the new school. And they suggested we give Hooper a call. And so John and his team did that right away. And Hooper gave us a price of $29,000 to do the work, which is compared to the $50,000 quote that you saw in your packet. So when we saw that our first quote for install was that significant, we knew we were going to start looking for other options. And thank you for giving us the idea, but and then John following through on it with his team. So the 29,000 would obviously replace the 50,000 that was in the packet. But if you want to go back, Rebecca, this topic is regarding the existing original dishwasher to the middle school, which was built in 1992. That dishwasher basically at the end of the school year was no longer functional. As we went through the process, we did learn that the state code has changed and that grease traps are now required with dishwashers. John and his team were seeking clarification from the village as to whether we get a variance or not. And so that those discussions have been going on. But as a result, we received that first quote with a grease trap in the over 50. We then sought a second quote, which was the one at 29. That does include the grease trap. The district, meaning administration, cannot approve a project over 25,000. So we put this on the agenda because we knew that it was probably going to be over 25 once we received additional quotes. So we are recommending approval. And for anyone who might be asking, like, is this a good long-term investment because the middle school will be moving to a new location? The answer is yes, because that kitchen will still be used by Taher once it's a high school campus. It's a to be determined whether high school students will be eating over there for lunch, but right now Taher is using both kitchens at the Heritage Old Intermediate site. One of them is being used for a lot of their catering work and work with the village center and also work within the district. So they do use that extra kitchen and they would intend to continue using this as we move forward. So it would be a good investment, for that building.
So both of these quotes are installation.
So those are installation, yep.
So I guess from my standpoint, I'd make the recommendation to go with
Hoover, or,
Second.
All in favor of using Hooper, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the next topic is the softball field. And just some background on this one. As part of the Title IX report that you saw as board members last fall, there was a recommendation to proceed with a lighting project at the varsity softball field. The school board hired Rattler to complete the design. So the design process took a couple of months. Once the design was completed, dialogue took place both with high school administration and parents from the softball community as to whether or not that field, the current varsity field, was really the right long-term field for a varsity field. Randy and I were also receiving calls from neighbors who were very concerned about lights going up there by a residential neighborhood. So we came back to the facility committee and said, you know, there's been these discussions that have gone on. And there's an interest in taking a look at the current JV field behind the middle school to explore whether or not that could be a better longer term solution as a varsity field. So the board then approved hiring Rattler to conduct a comparison of the two fields and the viability of the JV field becoming a varsity field. Rebecca, would you mind opening that report? And we can go to, there's a summary page that I'll just move to so you can see the end result of it. A little bit further back, sorry. There's a compare, yeah, the chart there. So at the end, there's a chart that really has X's as far as varsity softball field and JV softball field. And then there's a recommendation underneath the chart. The recommendation said it is our recommendation to install the lights and make improvements on the existing JV field and utilize it as the new varsity field. The top 3 reasons for the recommendation are the best orientation for hitting as far as the athletes and the games go, direct access to parking, walkways, and the restrooms. And then obviously it's further away from the airport overlay. And obviously Randy and I would add in the neighborhood and the concerns we've heard from the neighborhood. So Rattler conducted this review completely on their own. We asked them to just to tell us what they really truly thought as far as the two fields that we wanted their recommendations. They came back after a thorough review, and you can read the whole report if you want, and concurred with the thoughts of the softball community that that move might make sense. The light investment was something we were planning to do either way. And so the pause of putting the lights on that field potentially was a good decision if the board feels like moving the field is a worthwhile decision to make. The report does point out that additional investments besides the lights would be required to move a varsity field from one to another. And you can see, you know, in the report, it talks about the various additional investments that would be required. I know Nick had a chance to have a meeting last week, and again, just was able to see this for the first time. So the two, I guess, the decision points are the board members comfortable with this concept, which is switching the varsity field from where it currently is to the one behind the middle school? And secondly, if we do want to make that move, and if we do want lights to be ready for the spring, the lights themselves have to be ordered. So it's about a 60 to 90 day process to get the poles. We would need Rattler to move the design from where it's currently located on the existing varsity field to the JV field. But the poles are the same, the lights are the same, but they just would have to design at one field versus another. But the only way we'd have a chance of getting it ready by the spring is getting the lights going. But if as board members, you feel like you have to see like drawn up designs and quotes on the rest of it, we would have to wait until September. We just received this late last week and added it to the agenda. So as an example, there's recommendations in there for like batting cages and what's referred to as like a press box. We don't have information on that because this just came in. If you wanted to see the complete picture, we would have to do that in September. I'm just a little concerned that that might cause us to lose the light window. But we want to make sure you have access to the information you want to be able to make this decision. So we just wanted to share what we've learned so far. Nick, if you had anything you wanted to add, you're welcome to come up and do it. I know you had discussions last week. I mean, feel free if you wanted to. But we just wanted to turn it over to the board members for any initial reactions that you might have to this or any information that you feel like you need to know before making this type of decision. Randy?
I'll let Nick go first. Anything that you've seen, Nick, as you've kind of been here for a month and reviewed it and kind of seen kind of where you're at with kind of the rest of the eyes.
Sure, the group was very, workable, supportive on priority number one right now is as far as the lights go is that's what's been determined. So when it comes to all the extra things and, press box, batting cages, dugouts potentially, that's where they understand it's going to take time and it's not going to happen right away for this upcoming season. But as far as what Steve said with the lights, and knowing the timeline that you're looking at to get those in, that's what we started our conversation with. And then the discussion kind of morphed because we talked about the current field, the current batting cages, where the varsity field is now. Those were custom built some time ago, so there's been a big struggle to find actual nets that fit and go all the way to the ground, so balls aren't going underneath the fence constantly. So all of those things kind of came about as a conversation piece of if this field did move to JV, here's some of the other things that would need to be checked off the list to eventually make it a varsity softball field where you're hosting WNA competition games. Potentially playoff games as well, versus just saying, all right, here are lights, we're plopping them down, that's it, that's all we need to do.
With the lights there, if we install them now and we're there in spring, would varsity play there in spring, or you have to wait for these other items, right? So the lights alone aren't going to make that a varsity field for spring. And I mean, they'll still play on the varsity field in spring. Right?
I think the discussion was to play, you'd be able to play on the JV field. There's some leveling that's going on and later in August, a few weeks, for both the baseball and softball fields. We talked about, like, it's not ideal, but Watertown has like a table probably almost as big as this one, set up behind to sell concessions, or if they're doing like streaming from it. Haven't talked to Jason McConnell, for example, like if there's no raised structure there, I don't know the benefit, or I guess the quality of the streaming for Warrior Media, for example, stream games from that avenue. The field isn't like significantly worse. It just doesn't have that amenity of the batting cages right there that would be across the street from varsity. There's a storage shed that's closer to like home plate on the JV field, where you might eventually have to relocate that if you're adding that scorer's booth or press box. But it's not a non-playable field. There's not a ton of games right now scheduled to be at night just because of the question mark involved in this process. That doesn't mean that wouldn't happen though. We all know spring weather, double headers are probably going to be a reality of the situation. So being able to start a game at 5 o'clock and play 2 contests, knowing we have lights, is going to be a huge asset compared to finding 2 different dates, more umpires and that kind of situation. So
it's possible that
it
you
is
would do
possible.
so. Well, I would definitely support having those lights installed, but I see a lot of other things that we need as well. Yeah.
I guess the challenge that you're asking us to make a decision on putting the lights up on the JV field. We don't have even a budget of how much it's going to cost to build the press box, to put up the stands, to do all of that kind of stuff. Is it $500,000? Is it $1 million? We just don't know. So, I guess we've been playing for a period of years without lights and made it happen. What does one more season have? If we don't have lights for one more season. If we truly want to move, the varsity for the JV, we should have an understanding or a picture of what we're going to be paying for and what we're committing to.
I do believe that John and his team, working with Nick, could by September pull together the other numbers now that they've had a chance to see this. I don't think it'd be insurmountable. I mean, obviously, I think we go to Vogel and say, can you give us some help on building a press box and what that would look like and what would need to be there? I think we can get a quote from them within a month. So I do feel like we have the potential to get the other information that you would want, and we do understand that you would want the rest of that information. One possibility, because the lighting vendors have told us the poles are the same in either location. So if you wanted for the possibility of knowing that additional information, but yet moving ahead with lights, the poles can be ordered. And the additional information could be brought in September. So that's one idea as far as a possibility.
I think the other piece we can take a look at, and this would be a question for kind of our installer, is if we do have to delay until September to kind of get a better picture on the whole cost and budgetary piece. If in September we get the green lights and we get the electrical and the concrete standards, can the poles be installed in the spring and still make it in time for the softball?
Oh, sure.
Because that way they would have those
Right.
those bases, and then it's just the
Right.
installation of the actual pole.
Right.
So there's some options that I think we may want to explore on that end.
So do we have the electrical, do we have any problems with electrical or either site?
There's electrical near that site. So I mean, it's
So
not,
we can
it's,
pull electric.
but it's a matter of those bringing the electrical out to those specific spots and then putting those pylons in that, then the lights go up on it. So that's a piece we can take a look at. I mean, when you take a look at, we've looked at this project for several years. It's not just a new addition, and it's something we've talked about even prior to the Title IX audit. Is the better long-term solution is to put that varsity field on the current JV field. That's the best option. So there's a short-term piece of cost, which I understand, Jack, we need to get that. And that was a piece Steve and I talked about last week, was we don't have those. But we feel we can pull them together, but we'd like to still see, is there a way to make the timeline work? So that we have at a minimum, the lights on the field for the spring season. And if we can do something else addition to that, that'd be great, but we can. I think what we can do is bring back. We can bring to you a report at a bare minimum I'd like to keep it on the agenda for the August board meeting, so we can keep this there. And if we have any of our information, we can pull that together. And we can also explore, is there a way to phase these lights to still get them in the spring if we have to delay kind of the vote on it till September?
Yes, from my standpoint, we've committed to the lights, so I make the motion that we, commit to the poles.
Second.
And
Just get them ordered.
get them ordered, and, if we have to wait an extra year, they're in stock.
Good point.
Additionally, I'm really excited about this project for the kids, and I think in the long term, like Randy said, this gives our probably entire athletic community the opportunity to collaborate more effectively and efficiently moving forward in the future with restrooms and concessions and warrior media, all those things, just because of the proximity of that field to baseball and soccer and all the other things that we're working through. So I'm really excited for this for the kids. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity to go to how will the school be paying for the batting cages and the press box, or is there booster funds or some sort of fundraising that will be taking place too? That would, I think, is just a good data point to kind of know as we're talking through this for budgetary purposes.
Rich, were you gonna say something? Oh, I thought I saw you raise your hand.
No,
I thought you were offering. to
would
make
you
sure-
want to stop
I was
the
gonna-
press box? Is that what
I
you're
was gonna
thinking?
say, I thought you were offering to get us a quote for sure by the.
Yeah, Rich is just an umpire. So remember.
Well, I'm just going off, isn't there some semblance of a structure there now? That they could utilize for scoring and things? It's- The reason I ask is my umpiring experience, that's where they've kept score. Now is that, yeah, the JV field, there's that wooden structure that's also served as a storage building, I believe, right there on the.
I think that's what Nick, you were talking about.
Yeah, I don't know that's high enough, like you're talking about, like a stream, for example, if you're at the base, if you watch the baseball stream, because they're up a little bit higher, there, you get that nicer view. We'll say like the boosters, for example, they were talking about spending some money on the current batting cages at the varsity field now, but they don't want to necessarily do that if it's going to move, just because of the gravel surface that's in there right now too, so. I
Maybe
don't
we can
speak
get
for
some
them,
of
but
that
there
out
is that willingness to help fund those projects.
I know they've done a lot of work and fundraising and stuff, and the current field school, the new back, I don't know what the words are. What's that? The screens, yeah, that's good.
So we have a motion on the table from Jack to go ahead with the lighting, ordering the poles only.
Ordering the polls.
Second,
Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. And then you'll bring the rest back in September and. But, you know, it sounds like we're all in agreement to move the varsity to that JV field and to pursue that.
Jay and Rich, let me ask you a quick question. What would it take to what do you need in order to kind of get us the cost and what it would take to put up a similarly sized or press box?
Yeah, I'd like to have a discussion with the UA to make sure that if we can code wise replicate exactly what you have. I was actually on the field back yesterday. I caught one this last week. So I think it'd just be a quick discussion with them. Can we truly replicate what you have from an access standpoint and a code perspective?
Sure.
And if that's the case, from our perspective, that ought to be all we need to put together a number for that. It looked like, I think there's maybe some additional concrete paving and stuff, which we can figure out, and then I can work with you guys on a batting cage. If that's something you want to get. September is definitely good from my perspective.
All right. Awesome.
I gotta believe that this is gonna cost at least $750,000.
Where does that number come from?
Well, depending upon if you got donations and things like that, just look at bleachers and all that other stuff that you're putting in.
That kind of depends on how you phase it. I mean, the initial press, and I realize this was 15 years ago, but the original press box was 25 years. That was 15 years ago, but that was paid for by the boosters. That was my day two on the job, was that coming on. So I remember that pretty well. Obviously that's changed a lot over time, but I'm hoping we're not getting at those kind of numbers. I think we're projecting lower, but we'll work with you, Jay, to see kind of what's realistic there and what we need to do.
Can we like to answer something?
The bleachers at the current varsity field are movable and they would meet our needs. I know that the JV bleachers are moved to football, so they are movable. A lot of parents sit in lawn chairs when they watch the games. I just feel the risk, the JV field was playable for many games, but varsity had to cancel because of the state of line. The press box at the varsity field, every year we have to throw equipment out because it's underwater inside. It's a drier area and it's safer. The road, there was a child hit by a car 2 seasons ago crossing because they have to cross from the parking lots to get to varsity. It's just such a safer situation.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll look forward to those numbers and thank you. Consideration of the NAMI contract.
So at last month's facility committee meeting, we talked about this topic and the committee requested that we align the extension through the warranty work at the new school. Last month when we presented this, it actually went further than that. And so the request was to line it up with the work, and then it would make sense to go out to public review at that point, because any savings from warranties on both of the new schools will have passed. So we asked North American Mechanical to revise it for that feedback. So they did, they removed a year, and now this addendum goes through the warranty period for the middle school. So basically it takes into account a school coming on, school being demoed, another school coming on, and the warranty periods for both the new schools. And so we believe that aligns with the feedback that we received at the last meeting, but you're welcome to share any comments that you have.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for changing that. Thank you. And I think our last item is consideration of an energy service partner with Westfield.
So at the last meeting, again, we had some feedback from this committee and a request for some additional information on this topic. So John and I went back to Westfall and asked them for more specific information. And so they provided us some new attachments that we put into your board book for your consideration. Couple of things to note. There is a sample project in here. It has not been determined if that's the right size for the new heritage. But we shared with them that as a committee, you wanted to see costs of like what it actually could look like. So they quoted an actual solar system for the new heritage, but the sizing has not been determined yet. So that's included. Examples of work that they've done has been included. They included examples in Monona Grove work that they did there. And they specifically put information in here about some of the conversations we had last month about efficiency of work. So they identified as an example, the electricians would be at the same rate as what's already on the construction contract. And so some of the things that you were wondering about last month, they put in writing for you this month. We would not be asking this committee or the board to actually approve the solar system itself. This was just an example. And when you saw the numbers from Jay earlier in that presentation, part of the reason why the soft costs went up was inserting $500,000 solar project at the new heritage site. That this in and of itself, you would have to approve at a later point. But Westfall was not going to go any further on it unless they actually are going to be the one doing the work. So they were giving us an example of what a particular system would look like. So in the documents were the updates to the information that you asked for last month. John and I could do our best to answer any questions you might have on this. And we would not be asking to approve an expenditure. We would just be asking if you wanted to select Westfall as the partner for this work. In the future, we would bring back the actual proposals for doing a solar project at Heritage.
Why wouldn't you just put a requirements document together and ask for a quote?
Because the size of the solar system would have to be determined first. Which is part of it, but if you wanted to go down the RFP path instead, we could absolutely do that. It just looks different than this process, so that could be done as well.
So what do you ask?
That we've had with working with a similar contractor too, and having one contractor from some of your guys' perspective too, is working with Westfield.
We got Rich on our side, so we should probably just go with it.
Love the confidence, Jack. Love the confidence.
All right, so are we ready to take Westfall as our energy partner?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we got Rich.
I'm not even coming to the board meeting.
All right, I think that concludes our meeting. Thank you all for attending. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Have a
Yeah,
great day.
can you connect with Jay and Rich on